Top of the morning to you, everybody. It's Dave here on this St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, 2025. I have all of your stories for your rush hour ride to work, if you're even heading there. Are you dressed in green? Are you drinking Guinness? Are you having some corned beef and cabbage? Don't desecrate the culture too much, but we will speak about a St. Patrick's Day mishap as 16 people plunged to the ground, some injured after a scary roof collapse. Also, astronauts are returning home. They won't make it in time for St. Patrick's Day, but they are on their way back. I'll share what former astronaut Mark Kelly has to say about their plunge into the ocean. And Pam Anderson and Liam Neeson, do we have a meet cute? Are they dating? Is this the relationship that's going to bring us all back together? And also, Glamour versus Justin Baldoni. Oh my gosh, what you missed over the weekend after this bombshell Glamour article came out. Well, the internet fought back and there's an all-out beef happening between mainstream media and the interwebs, and I'm going to share it for you. Also, J.D. Vance tells protesters to get a job as they protested on Friday, not realizing they don't have a job because they all got laid off. And also, speaking of losing jobs, Tesla has plummeted their stock, and now it looks like Canada is going to be taking away some grants for Tesla buyers. I'll share those stories and so much more. It's all happening right now on The Rush. I feel like this happens every St. Patrick's Day. You know, the weather's getting a little bit nicer. People throw parties. And here you have 16 people on a roof. It plunges to the ground. Some were seriously injured. I'm going to share a clip of that video right here. So there it is. The camera pans around. And then there it goes. You see it just there. People are drinking their green drink, and all of a sudden, not luck of the Irish for those folks. I hope they're okay, though. But yeah, be careful. Look at the building code before you jump on roofs, especially these college homes. We know they don't all pass. They don't have the structural integrity. All right, well, let's hope it's a safer landing for the astronauts. Here's what the Today Show had to report, as there was a little bit of a delay getting the astronauts into space, but now they are in space. The new astronauts to grab the ones that, they've been stuck up there for like 9 months. Here's the story.
Conditions could not have been better for Crew 10 to head up to the International Space Station between the blue skies, no technical issues. It was a beautiful launch in every way here at the Kennedy Space Center. With Crew 10, we're talking about 2 NASA astronauts, 1 Japanese astronaut, and a Russian cosmonaut. We're now talking about they are midway through their 28-hour journey up. And they will, as we've talked about, relieve Crew 9, 2 of whom arrived at the space station in September. As we've talked about, of course, Butch and Sunny. Now, they had launched last June, for those of you who were with us as we were here for that launch.
All right, so yeah, they launched last June. They were supposed to be there for a few days, and they're finally coming home. Here's what retired astronaut and American hero Senator Mark Kelly has to say, describing what the return is going to be like.
Dragon spacecraft is a capsule. Think of Apollo. Comes flying through the atmosphere like a rock. Heats up, eventually the parachute's open, they land in the water. They'll get swung around a lot, the parachute. It's rather violent and dynamic, but it's a good spacecraft. And they'll get back to Earth safely. Over 8 months is really hard on your body. My brother spent a year on the International Space Station. While he was up, he lost 20% of its heart mass. 20%.
Jeez.
That's a lot. DNA had some changes. We were identical twins. I'm not so sure anymore.
How wild is that? Identical twins, one goes up for a year, loses 20% of his heart mass. I mean, not to mention the bone marrow and everything like that. I mean, there's no gravity, so your body immediately starts changing itself to adapt to the to space, even with all the exercising they do. So we're looking forward for their return. I hope they get a hero's welcome. And here's an update on this story for those that care about the birds. I don't know. I'm detaching from the birds because I don't like them. These birds need to knock it off. You got the eagle here, had 3 eaglets, one of which was a bad boy and was, pecking at the others. And then that one kind of went missing, and everyone thought, well, it died. And then now there's actually footage, it looks like, of that eaglet not alive, assuming it's not sleeping right now. But it's there in the nest. So now that, I guess, some of the snow melts from the nest, they're finding that out. Hey, it's a tough life out there. It's a tough life out there for an eagle. All right. Well, it's a tough life out there for wombats as well. Remember that American who picked up the baby wombat? We covered this story, and then it went super viral because, she ripped the baby away from its mother, ran back to her car, took a couple photos, and then gave it back. And then she was about to get deported. She left Australia on her own. So everyone started hating on her. Some of it rightful. It's like you should shame somebody for coming to the country and just messing with your sort of ecosystem. But, the internet always takes things too far. And rather than kind of own up, yeah, hey, I had a problem and go away, she did that thing that a-holes do where they fight back. She says, am I a villain? Things, dear reader, are not as they seem. And at this point, you should never read any further, but we will. Over holding a wombat, thousands threatened my life. And by the way, did they really threaten your life, or were they just a-holes online? Did someone show up to your house? This is the problem with the internet. It's mean, but then it proves your point that the internet's so mean, they are all coming after me. It's like, no, they're losers. Don't worry about them. They're just crazy people. We'll get into more of that with Glamour, the article about Justin Baldoni, where she's like, oh, the internet's calling me a bad mom. It's like, trust me, they're going to do that regardless. It's the internet, but here we have the weaponizing of the internet. Let me be clear, she says. These same people ought to understand the reality of Australia today. For the readers that are so angered by my mistaken attempt to help and that I am a hunter, do not be blind to your country. Oh, she was only helping that baby wombat as she ripped it from its mother. Okay, come on. Let's start with wombats. The Australian government allows and permits the slaughter of wombats. So then she brings up all of the, cruel things that the government does. Maybe they have a wombat infestation. I have no idea. But she goes on, and it's like, you're missing the point. People just didn't like to see an American, and especially during these hostile times, come into another country and mess with their baby wombat. So just take a break, take a couple months off the internet, maybe change your Instagram handle to a new name and just start over, okay? Nobody's going to care about you. All right. Well. We have the Blake Lively story of the day. Some people are like, is this thing still interesting? Are we beating a dead horse? Are we stealing a baby wombat? It is. And I'm going to tell you why. Glamour magazine over the weekend posted this article, Inside the Blake Lively Hate Campaign, Fueled by Mommy Sleuths. And then, of course, I commented, Daddy Sleuth reporting for duty. And in this article, it was okay. It wasn't terrible. It talked about some of the right-wing content creators that are covering the story. We did a whole video on it. You can go check that out. But what's really interesting is that the writer of this article, who's like a senior editor for Glamour, and by the way, Glamour magazine, it's always bizarre when magazines that might not be the ones you would go to for think pieces about modern culture, sometimes they get it right? Like there's certain times where, hey, a good article is a good article. But in this case, what it gets wrong is it's very dismissive of the people that have been covering this case that might not be who they say they are. And by that, I mean, they make it political, right? I mean, look at this Instagram title. Content creators have seemingly declared themselves experts in Blake Lively's legal battle, overanalyzing and investigating every appearance and interaction the star has. Now, look, I understand some of the point they're making, and I'm going to share Stephanie McNeil's response to some of the hate she's getting, and then we'll just kind of do a deep dive on it. We'll have this story for you next. I think the most interesting part of the fallout of this article is we're seeing mainstream media interact with the comment section in ways we don't see too often. Usually you watch CNN or whatever channel you're watching and the journalist goes on their merry way. But now we have Stephanie McNeil responding to some of the fallback she's getting. And I would say the biggest thing that Stephanie McNeil gets wrong here is she just assumes everyone's part of this sort of cult-like feast to go after Blake Lively, when in fact Blake Lively just has more to go after than Justin Baldoni does at this point, because she fired a bunch of shots at him to ruin his career, and he's provided pretty adequate evidence so far to back up his side of the argument. Again, it'll play out in trial or it won't. Here's what Stephanie McNeil initially said, and then I'm going to share with you what she said on Instagram that is really infuriating people.
I just realized if you're not Blake Lively pilled, you might not know what I'm talking about. Well, you could read my article and then you would know. But basically, the rumor right now is that the CIA is convincing everyone to hate Justin Baldoni. I just feel...
And by the way, I don't think that that's the general rumor. I think what's going on is Blake Lively hired a guy who worked for the comms department in the CIA. So she hired an ex-CIA crisis PR expert, and people are now seeing it play out where they go, all right, well, let's see what kind of articles she comes up with, because that's what they hired.
Like, we need to take it seriously how many people are like falling for TikTok lies and like conspiracy theories. It's really, really, really scary. And I think as women, like, it's happening mostly to women. And I feel like we just need to do something about it because it's really scary, and like it's all against women too. And I don't know how to say this eloquently, but it's really scary. And I think as women we need to fight against it. That's all.
Okay, so she says women are the ones that are kind of the target of a lot of the online conspiracies. And I'd argue that Justin Baldoni, I mean, everyone initially was covering why all the cast unfollowed him, right? The big story was, why is Justin, what did he do wrong? And people were looking into him. I think there's plenty of conspiracies that go after men. I think just in this case, you have entertainment news, which I think a lot of women, maybe there's a higher majority, but although it's not like all women. We have a ton of men in the audience here, but they're putting together their quote unquote mommy sleuth abilities. So anyway, she continues right here and really does a good job of riling up a lot of influencers and content creators. And look, there will be theories that get it wrong. That's going to exist. We've seen this play out after the Boston bombings, where the whole internet was hunting for the Boston bombers, and they completely got it wrong. We see them get it wrong all the time. But when it comes to finding a needle in the haystack, the internet has the bandwidth to do that. The internet uncovered many aspects of details in this case that weren't out there, that being the metadata from the New York Times articles and things like that. So the internet does get it right. You just have to sift through it all. But to put everyone in a blanket statement like they're all a bunch of crazy conspiracy theorists, that's not going to play well. And she knows this as a journalist. You know, you can't just you can't treat everyone that way. But have a listen to her new response.
My Instagram is currently a mess. I'm getting a lot of comments. There's one misconception that I think is really important to clear up. There is this belief that me, as someone who works for corporate media, has more of an incentive to lie or bend the truth or create drama or share things that are misleading than people who are independent creators or citizen journalists on TikTok or Instagram do. The complete opposite is actually the truth. A lot of these creators will say things like, I'm not beholden to corporate media. I don't get paid for this. I'm only doing this because I believe in the truth. But they are not only getting paid for creating this content, they get paid the more dramatic that it is, the more they can keep you guys engaged, the more crazy it is.
So she's not entirely wrong. I get paid more money when more people watch my channel. But I would argue I have to have a really high batting average of getting it right, or else people will stop watching. So there is a huge incentive as a content creator to not mess this up. So she's not wrong that, the titles, there's a lot of hyperbolic titles and thumbnails and whatnot. But I would argue that if we get it wrong, that we come right back and we share the correct updated version of the story. Whereas legacy media, traditional media, sometimes, like, she's made one article. How do you tie it all together? It's such a complicated conversation to have versus covering this daily for multiple months. There are situations where corporate media doesn't want to touch an aspect of a subject because it could get shut down. I mean, you could look at who represents her agent or her boss's agent and how they are represented in the big agencies as it's compared to CAA, UTA, WME, these major agencies that then represent Ryan Reynolds. So those ties do exist. I'm not saying anyone at this level has kept her from sharing her truth, but she's beholden to get it right and is getting feedback from audience saying, we think you got it wrong. And rather than do a deep dive into it, I think she's pushing back and saying, no, you guys are getting it wrong because you guys are the one profiting off of every corner of this mess.
The more theories they can come up with, they are the ones profiting off of the Blake Lively drama. Look, I love when people read my stories. Obviously, it matters to the bottom line of my employer. But at the end of the day, like, personally, I make what my salary is, whether, 10 people read my story or 10 million read my story. I personally do not profit off of this Instagram account. I do not profit off of any of my stories per story. But I could go on here and spend my time, coming up with Blake Lively theories or Justin Baldoni theories or, analyzing lip reading. And I would get rewarded by the algorithm because I would be causing controversy. I would be causing drama. I would be causing people to come back to my account because they would be so freaked out or interested or unbelieving of what I was saying.
So again, it's very interesting to dive into this. You could probably do a whole course on PR and involve what's happening right now because it's a shift in the way media works. So she's pretty much upset at investigators, people that are showing their math and publicly investigating. Now, when it comes to like the lip biting, which was a big deal where Blake Lively bit Justin Baldoni's lips, that's a big deal because she argued harassment because he bit her lip. So we look at these things, and by the way, the internet, Donna Bowling says, I didn't think it was possible, but you've actually made it worse. You're actually completely lose your argument because now it's clear you ran a hit piece on creators. And I don't know if it was a hit piece, but I understand the point. Stephanie McNeal says one final thing. The amount of insults and harassment I'm getting for this, I have people telling me I'm a bad mother, should give anyone doing this pause. And again, like I said, same with the Wombat story. There's going to be some insane people out there that say mean things in this sort of pig pen that we're in. But without a crystal ball, who's the one who initially shared the lip biting video, I believe, Reddit, I think, took it from her and didn't credit her, so give credit where it's due, says, Stephanie, you are ignoring the point. You assume that we are all the same. We're not. We are reporting just like you. I'm a small business owner. I have never said that I'm not paid. I'm reporting on a public story the same way that you are. So she says you're actually misleading your audience by claiming that you aren't beholden to editors who don't want to alienate their audience, their access to the celebrities that they cover. So yeah, entertainment news has always been, I'm not saying it lacks journalistic integrity, but it's not the investigative news that you find elsewhere. It's fluffy. Who wore it best? Watch the stars pick out avocados at the supermarket. It's very light and calm. And I'm not saying glamour. Glamour is, sure, she's writing a semi-serious piece here, but by kind of giving your opinion that all the people are heading into the pipeline of the alt-right and all the journalists are profiting off of this, they're the bad people. It takes away the nuance of what's going on. There's plenty of people covering this story that have extreme great takes, that are doing great work, and they might elevate themselves above the people that are just, doing the hit pieces and the, the kind of like, very juvenile form of looking at it from a gossip perspective. There's a little bit of both. And this is just the world we live in. And the internet's going to do the internet. And you kind of have to sift through it. But there is good work being done out there.
And, when you have a story like this, something doesn't happen every single day. But these creators they're getting huge accounts. They're making a lot of money off of this drama. And they have to keep it going. They have to get people coming back. I would be willing to bet that a lot of these creators who, are yelling at me or who people are saying, like, they just want to tell the truth, they don't care about money or profit, are making so much more money than me.
It's true. And some people argue, well, that goes to show her point that she's bitter. And maybe there is some bitterness. And as I responded, Stephanie, there's no hate here. If you want to come on the channel, we can talk about this. I don't know if she would. And we'll have to see if we get any other updates. But again, I find this so fascinating because I'm not here to say, oh, look, we're doing better than you are. You're just upset that I'm crushing it out here. We are crushing it because there is an appetite for analyzing all of this. But at the same time, there are things coming up every day. There's new interviews, there's new motions, there is a lot going on. and there is a public appetite for it. So I encourage her to just continue to cover the story, and maybe she should be on social media a little bit more. Not everything plays well to the written medium like glamour. And I think what you got to do is you got to find your audience where they are. Some are on TikTok, some are on YouTube, Snapchat, Instagram, wherever. And some people don't read all these extensive articles on glamour. But welcome to the comment section. I know it's a beast out there. Don't take it too personally and just try to get it right. All right, coming up, we got some more stories to get to involving the sinking of Tesla. We'll have that next. All right, Tesla products are now excluded from British Columbia's hydro rebates. What does this mean? Have a listen.
That if British Columbians heard that $10,000 of taxpayer money was going to Elon Musk, they'd want to throw up. So we removed them from the program.
Rebates no longer apply to Tesla chargers, batteries, converters, inverters. All of those things are off the table, and except unless you bought them before March the 12th and it was pre-approved. I did talk to John Royston, and he is with Plug-in BC. He was one of the first Canadians to buy a Tesla and loves his car. This is what he had to say.
I think for everybody, rebates are extremely important because EVs are more expensive. Now, over the long term, they are not, because you save enough on gasoline and particularly on maintenance, but it's that initial hit.
Now, it's true. I got my Tesla 2 years ago, and I got a $7,500 federal rebate, which means I didn't have to pay $7,500 on those taxes. I got $7,500 back. It was a big deal. And Tesla took advantage of these rebates more than anyone because they were really first to the market with a really good electric car. Now, there's other companies that are coming up, but that's money that the government socialized, pooled from everyone's tax dollars, the federal government, and or I should say that's money that didn't go into taxes, which is like the same thing, right? And that's money that was given back to the consumer to incentivize people to buy. And so just another example where Tesla did a real solid job of profiting off of government, handouts, as it were. Handouts that I think are good. I think these rebates are good. They have a rebate, or they had one for getting solar on your roof and things like that. It's good to have these rebates to help people be pushed into a more green direction. But now BC is saying, well, thanks to what he is a part of with regard to the tariff war, they're pulling that back. Here's a fun moment. I mean, I don't know, no one got hurt, but President Trump takes a mic to the face. So if you're on the audio only, I'm going to kind of show you what's going on here. He was being interviewed, and somebody hit somebody's boom mic. They're always on a stick, like a long pole, and it goes smashes, and it's nice and fluffy, but it goes smashes right into his face. And the face that Trump makes after getting hit, pretty funny stuff there. So it reminded me actually of this SNL sketch. Have you guys ever seen this sketch where Bill Hader's character plays this old man, and he just kind of hits people in the face with his microphone?
All right, what happened?
So there it is. There's the moment there where he gets in people's personal space with a hot mic. All right, let's move it on to this story. Let's end on something, I guess, kind of light. White Lotus star Jason Isaacs says, "Stop asking if that was really my hog." Flamed over the double standard remark. So he showed his personal White Lotus on camera. Great show, season 3. And it's full frontal male nudity, just for those guys. And he was asked if he's sick of commenting on this member of his. And I guess people got upset because, a lot of women have been asked stupid questions about their bodies in the past. But here it is from CBS Mornings, Jason Isaacs live discussing the full frontal.
A lot of people are debating it. It's all over the internet, and it's interesting because
You didn't answer the question.
Well, I'll tell you why. Because the best actress this year was Mikey Madison at the Oscars, and I don't see anybody discussing her vulva, which was on television all the time. No, I'm not talking about Swedish cars. So I think it's interesting that there's a double standard for men, that when women are naked, Margaret Qualley as well in The Substance, nobody would dream of talking to her about her genitalia or her nipples or any of those things. And so it's odd that there's a double standard when it comes to discussing.
But we so really
It's a bit of a dodge.
So anyway, he says there's a double standard, and then people responded, actresses are constantly asked about their nude scenes. Even when they're not nude, they're questioned about their underwear or what wax they'd had in so-called professional interviews. So someone says, what the F kind of warped bubble is he in? Women get dissected and scrutinized all the time. And it's true. And I think there's been sort of a pushback, right? I think there's been a pushback where we've said, all right, let's stop asking women about, the sex scenes and all the personal intimacy scenes like that. And he's saying, well, everyone's asking about my hog. And it's like, oh, look, how about no more questions about nude scenes out there, right? But I understand his point, but also, of course, plenty of actresses have had to deal with the misogyny of only caring about what they're wearing or the nude scene that they were in and not the rest of their quote-unquote art. But another example of actors kind of being blowhards. But I think a lot of people were kind of shocked when they saw a guy who was on Harry Potter, right? He's in the Harry Potter movies, and all of a sudden he's doing a full frontal, and like, oh boy, what's going... And by the way, the funny part to me is they use prosthetics now. Maybe not in the past. Kevin Bacon, Wild Things, but they use prosthetics for those scenes, right? So there's got to be a prosthetics company that's just got a shelf full of dicks. And I did not think on St. Patrick's Day 2025 I would end the episode saying shelf full of dicks, but here we are. All right, more coming your way. I'm actually traveling today, so I probably won't have any content until the afternoon rush, but I had several videos over the weekend you can go check out, so get to those. If there's any breaking news stories, I'll try to break them from the airport, but I'll be back this afternoon. As always, I'm Dave Neal, and this is The Rush.